Most people aren't lazy. There's a belief floating around the modern productivity space that if you're not constantly creating, you must be lazy, uninspired, or blocked, or unmotivated. But what if none of that is actually true? What if you're just buried under stimulation, noise, and distraction, and your brain is being conditioned to crave everything except the state that creativity actually requires? Most people aren't lazy, but there are a lot of people spending so much of their time overstimulated. And being overstimulated can be the enemy of imagination. Creativity doesn't come from constant speed and output. It doesn't come from scrolling or jumping between 10 different apps or flicking between songs like you're trying to outrun silence. Creativity comes from slowness, from space, from wandering, from that strange empty state where your mind finally stops trying to keep up with the entire world and has room to explore. This is sometimes called the default mode network, the part of your brain that lights up when you're not actively focusing on anything. It's the same network that generates daydreams, imagination, storytelling, and problem solving. It's where your creative thoughts assemble themselves before they surface. So just to note, there is quite a robust discussion happening in the scientific community at the moment about the default mode network and all of the networks that the brain uses. This video is purely focused on the ideas and the actions you can take. So let's not get too hung up on what network is what. What we're interested in today is knowledge and behavior. The problem is you can't access this part of your brain if you're constantly being fed information. All these notifications, all these videos, every hit of novelty. It's hard to open that door to creativity. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because your brain actually never gets the silence it needs to build something of its own. So if you want your creativity back and you want to access it regularly, you don't need to become more motivated. You don't need more time. You don't need more talent. You don't need a project management plan. You don't need some magical flash of inspiration. You may need somewhat of a detox. Not necessarily a detox from dopamine. I don't know whether that's possible, but a detox from an unnatural rhythm of dopamine generation your brain has been trained to expect when you look at things like social media. If you want your imagination to speak through you, you have to actually stop drowning it out and let it speak. One of the issues here is that in the modern world, we've sort of demonized boredom. We treat it like it's some sort of threat. But boredom is the birthplace of where creativity can flourish. It's like the opening act, the moment where the brain goes, alrighty, there's nothing happening, let me see what I can create. Every creative idea you've ever had, whether it's in the shower, on a walk, lying in bed, came from that state, not from overstimulation watching social media. Maybe a caveat would be when you're problem solving, but even in that state, it's directed and targeted and focused. Or it's in the moments where you try and relax that you come up with a solution. So your first stop in this detox of sorts is simple. It's to let yourself be bored. As an invitation, just to let your mind wander with no preconceived expectations of what you're going to get out of it. Right now, your brain may be wired for quick, fast, cheap novelty, snap stuff. Scrolling, swiping, repeat. Each hit is small, but together they shape the way you think. When you drown in that fast dopamine, it becomes really hard to engage in what we call delayed gratification. This is where you have a task that is undertaken slowly and consistently, and when you finish it, it feels amazing. You feel like you've accomplished something. It's really hard to do that when that's the same chemical that you get from scrolling that you can get quickly. But that overstimulation can really deplete your energy. It's a much better bet to focus on the slow dopamine, the dopamine of effort, focus, and discovery. That's where creative productivity comes from. So try and swap those quick hits for the deeper ones. Try reading instead of scrolling. Try listening to an entire song. Try watching long form content like YouTube videos. Try and enjoy stillness instead of stimulation. You're not actually detoxing or cutting dopamine here. You're reclaiming your relationship with it and your control over how you use dopamine in your life. Both for motivation, but also for creativity. And you have to have the ideas to then work on them and see them through to fruition. Your imagination cannot generate internal imagery when your senses are overloaded with external imagery. You do need that space and you do need that quiet. Almost like you're decluttering the mind. or turning down the brightness, reducing the noise. Perhaps stop multitasking, although I caveat this that some people find with some background noise, like a YouTube video or whatever, can actually help them focus. So find what works for you. As I said, these are ideas for you to experiment with. There are a lot of snake oil salespeople that will try and tell you that they've got the one fix, and that's just not accurate. Creativity does thrive, however, under specific conditions. It's sort of like a relaxed focus. There's low pressure, a little mystery, a little curiosity, a feeling of, I wonder what could happen if. In that state, you can create with intentionality. Now, obviously, if you're problem solving at work, there might be a little bit more pressure, but you've still got that focus, you've still got a bit of pressure, and you've still got that, I wonder what could happen if, to solve those problems. Maybe for you, it's a clean desk. Maybe for you, it's a scented candle. Maybe it's a notebook rather than a laptop to write your notes in. Maybe it's just focusing in on your breath before starting a task. Maybe it's stretching. Maybe it's ritualizing the beginning of the creative progress. That means that not every second has to be productive in the way that you might have been trained to think it has to be. Sometimes going for a walk is the most productive thing you can do before sitting down to work on a project. If you spend 8 hours a day writing an essay, by the end of the day, what you're outputting might not be very good. And if you're sitting there scrolling on your phone for an hour because you can't concentrate, you might as well just go for a walk. So try and slow down. Let discomfort breathe and let that restlessness happen. Allow your mind to detox from the speed. And you will get used to it. It will take a while, for some shorter than others, but being able to see the world in a deeper, richer way, that allows your thoughts to become clearer and ideas start forming again. It might seem to happen unexpectedly at first, but after a while, once you get in the rhythm, you'll find that there are certain things that work for you that allow creativity to come through. So are we calling it a detox, or are we just reframing our relationship with dopamine and claiming some more control? That's up to you to decide. However, I'm titling it something around a detox because people seem to be interested in it. And my intention is that we find the broadest possible audience that are going to get something out of this video. So let me know in the comments, because I'm actually curious, would you consider something like this a detox? Would you call it self-awareness improvement? Would you call it mind hacking? What would you call it? Let me know. The bottom line, though, is I think that engaging in creativity has to be sort of like a frequency, but there are ebbs and flows. You can't have that continuous dopamine hit and scattered attention. So give your mind the silence it needs. Reclaim your control over your dopamine so far as you can. And remember, we're all human. You're never going to have full control over your mind. Learn what helps you and learn what hinders you. It'll be different for everyone. And try and go forth without that massive sense of pressure that some people will feel to be productive. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the quality of the output, not the quantity.